peace is no longer an option because there was yet another armed rebellion against several major cities in Russia, which happened last night simultaneously, and these are basically Russian anti-Putin separatists which are fighting for the freedom of Russia. They were able to breach the borders between Russia and Ukraine, making those Russian border patrol services to literally flee, taking away their heavy armored vehicles with them. But that's not the only good news which came to us recently. ATACMS looks like was finally approved for the use of Ukraine, and Belarus right now is on high alert. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian altogether propaganda. Whoa! Okay, so so-called quote-unquote presidential elections in Russia are coming, and there is obviously like promotional offers, these like pieces of paper that people put in their doors of their houses, like kind of promoting the elections, that everyone should go and vote. And so this is exactly how one of these brochures was attached to one of the apartment buildings in Russia. As you can see, they use magnets on the faces of 3 out of 4 candidates, and the only one whose face was still visible is, guys, can you guess in the comments? Well, yes, it was Vladimir Putin. Which is just one of these many subtle confirmations how Putin is trying to influence the presidential elections in Russia. And to be honest, at this point he might not even need to do it that much, because the support for him is, to be honest, above average than it used to be in the past, but still, nevertheless, he wants to have an unconditional support. And obviously these are definitely not Americans who are influencing the presidential elections in Russia, no. This is Putin himself. And if you remember, this is exactly what we were discussing in yesterday's episode of Ridiculous Russian Propaganda. We used this article from Ground News, which basically says that Russian spy services accuse America of trying to interfere with presidential elections, however ridiculous it sounds. And right now I just wanted to take literally 15 seconds to once again thank Ground News for sponsoring these videos, because I already received an amazing feedback from you guys who already tried this service. And just to quickly sum up what this service does is that they basically pull all the articles from different sources in one single place, so it allows you to compare different headlines presented by different sided media, and then they also can show you bias distribution and factuality of articles in general, which basically shows you the trustworthiness of this particular news information. Honestly, this is an amazing service which I personally use every single day whenever making my videos, and I once again encourage every single one of you to at least give it a try. But please make sure to use my link down below, ground.news/RussianDude, for the amazing offers once again while they still last. Thank you so much. And while America most likely is not interfering in the Russian elections, I mean, at this point there is simply no point, there is something what Americans were able to finally to achieve. So let's talk about this right now really quick before I give you an update from the south and the east of Ukraine, and then separatists from Russia breaching the borders, the main event of today's video. And so yes, to briefly sum up what Americans were able to do is that they finally approved another $300 million military support package to Ukraine, something which hasn't happened in the last several months. And one of the best things about this particular package is that it looks like finally long-range missiles ATACMS were also included in this one, which will be launched from existing HIMARS systems which Ukraine already has. And since these are long-range metallic cylinders, such targets as Crimean Bridge are becoming now way within the reach for the Ukrainian military. And this has been pretty much perfectly summarized by the head of the CIA, Mr. Burns, is that this new upcoming and already approved military support package to Ukraine will allow Ukrainians to do penetrative attacks against the Crimean Peninsula. This is his literally exact quote. And so yes, now literally just a couple of words from the south of Ukraine before we go to the east. And first of all, in Kherson region, according to this video, Ukrainians were able to destroy yet another multiple launch rocket system of Russians called BM-21 Grad. And then right here is another video from Robotyne, where a Russian soldier is trying to entrench himself under destroyed tank Leopard 2A4, so he's pretty much digging under the tank, trying to hide himself from a Ukrainian drone. But Ukrainian drone operators are pretty professionals at this point, so for them covering such obstacles, maneuvering through them, it's no longer an issue. So you can only guess what's going to happen. But if you want to see the results for yourself, the full uncensored version is on my Patreon, the link is down below. Now, as promised, let's go to the east before we can switch our attention to the main event of the day, which is Russian separatists crossing the border. And first of all, right here is the video from Kharkov region, where Ukrainians for the last several months were building extensive defense structures and fortifications. At this point, this is a literal underground city, which is surrounded by concrete blocks, so this is not your just typical trenches dug with the shovels in the ground. No, these are already actual fortifications and defense structures. They also have kitchens inside, rooms, they even have sauna for showering and washing themselves, pretty much everything you would need to fight comfortably, literally right next to the front lines. And then right here is also a video right now from Kupiansk region, where Ukrainians, whenever they're using Swedish self-propelled artillery system called Archer, and were able to destroy 3 Russian D-20 152mm howitzers. And believe it or not, as we go along Luhansk front lines, right here is yet another video where Ukrainians were able to destroy one more multiple launch rocket system of Russians BM-21 called Grad. Our next stop brings us to Avdiivka, which shows an incredible almost 5 minutes footage where only 2 Ukrainian soldiers are repelling the entire assault attempt by Russians, and were able to eliminate at least confirmed 7 Z soldiers. This video does feel from time to time like it is a last stand, but it does have a very happy and fruitful and beneficial ending. The full version also on my Patreon, guys, go ahead and watch it, it's worth it, trust me. And ultimately is a very interesting and intriguing picture from Marinka, where we can see an abandoned Russian T-90M tank, which by the way is the most modern combat machine of the Russian military, which is, as you can see, is destroyed and abandoned. But the most interesting thing about this particular photo is that its active defense looks like just a pile of bricks. So I don't know exactly if these are actual real bricks or not. I mean, at this point I will not be surprised if these are actual construction materials. Which is pretty hilarious. Why would they put such nonsense on the most modern combat machine? But yeah, they did it, and still it did not help them to protect themselves. But more importantly is that several military related objects of the Russian military on the territory of Russia were attacked in the last several hours, so let's talk about this one right now really quick. But before we proceed, guys, if you don't mind, can you please support my work by simply liking this video and subscribing to my channel? There is nothing else I can ask you to do, because this does help with the YouTube algorithm to spread, to show my videos to much wider audiences. All this can be achieved by you once again simply liking the video and subscribing to my channel. That's it. Thank you guys so much. But so yes, speaking about the military related objects, in this last night a lot of oil refineries, oil storages, oil factories, everything related mostly to oil production and reservation were destroyed by Ukrainian drones attacks, such as for example cities which are affected were Kursk, Oryol and Nizhny Novgorod. As you can see, there is undeniable fire. Let's call it like this to try and be in compliance with the YouTube guidelines. And at first Russians were able to say that there was not a single attack, were able to intercept every single drone. These were loud noises because there was some kind of manufacturing processes going on. But later on they just could not deny the facts anymore, and they said that yes, we were attacked. And believe it or not, even the entire thermal plant in St. Petersburg was also attacked, which is, as you can see, is extremely far from the current Ukrainian front lines, which is absolutely incredible how Ukrainian drones were able to fly so far without being intercepted. But the fact is the fact, it did happen. And then right here is another video from Belgrade, where the local city administration was also attacked, most likely as a result of a Ukrainian drone. There was some minor damages, but once again the most important thing is that Ukrainians are able to achieve those things. And ultimately there was a Russian military transporter plane Il-76, which looks like, according to Russian data, there was a bird that fell, that got into an engine, so the engine was caught on fire and then it even detached from the wing itself, causing the plane to inevitably go down to earth, to land, like Russians call it hard landing. And all the passengers, all the military personnel inside this plane was also eliminated. And what do you think was the response by Russians? At this point I think it is not even point to ask, because the answer is always the same. A local residential area in Kryvyi Rog was severely damaged and destroyed as a result of a Russian attack, resulting in casualties among civilians, which begs the question: why whenever Ukrainians attack something, even on the territory of Russia, it is almost always military-related objects and never civilian buildings? Like you just saw, there were oil reservoirs, oil refineries which were attacked. And every single time Russians respond, this is almost all the time civilian areas and residential buildings. Aren't Russians protecting Ukrainian civilians from Ukrainian authorities? Aren't they didn't they swear to protect them? So why they are attacking them when they were the ones supposedly protect? Like, I just have no idea. Okay? Guys, please let me know in the comments, why do you think Russians are doing this? But obviously, without a doubt, the most significant event of the last 24 hours is that Russian separatists, Russian anti-Putin soldiers, those Russians who switched sides and started fighting on the side of Ukrainians, even though they are not receiving direct orders from the Ukrainian army, they were basically able to breach the Russian-Ukrainian border and attack several Russian major cities which are close to it, like Kursk, Belgorod, and several cities in Belgorod region, such as Shebekino and this one, Kozinka and Tetkina. So, long story short, the separatists we are talking about are the ones who are already familiar to you. The first ones are the Freedom of Russia Legion, Russian Volunteer Corps, and the last but not least is the Siberian Battalion. And as you can see from this video, which is one of the very first ones which appeared online, these Russian separatists, they're literally driving tanks into Russian cities to fight against the Russian border patrol services. Freedom of Russia Legion also released their own video, as you can see right here, at the moments of crossing the border. And then, shortly after, the Russian Volunteer Corps released a similar video, and they are pretty much preparing to cross the border in the night between March 11 and 12th. Unlike the Z army, their main purpose was not to destroy residential and civilian structures. I mean, why would they do it? They want to actually free and liberate Russia. So, for example, according to this video, one of the first military targets that they were able to destroy were, for example, armored personnel carriers of the Russian army, as you can see from this video. And obviously, all these three groups of the Russians who are fighting against Putin, they did this in collaboration. It is not a coincidence that all of them attacked at the same time. And pretty much the main idea why they did it, it is because, literally this is their quote, it will be impossible to overthrow the regime of Putin peacefully in the Russian Federation. We need to have a military intervention. Like mentioned previously, one of the first settlements which were able to be put under full control by those Russian forces was Tetkina. And even the local residents, they did not complain. They said that there was not a single harassment, there was not a single threat coming from those Russian separatists. They actually came and only fought the Russian military itself, nobody and nothing else. At the same time, according to this video, as you can see, Russian army, Russian soldiers, the Z army, they started running. They did not resist much, they abandoned their positions and they tried to save their lives. But what is even more intriguing is this next video, when there's an entire military convoy of Russian tanks also leaving those settlements, which kinda makes you think. If these relatively small units of the actual anti-Putin Russians can make this many Russian tanks, Russian soldiers to be afraid, nothing is impossible. It is only in the heads of the regular Russian people that, oh, we cannot do anything, it's not enough of us, they're not gonna listen to us, they're gonna put us to jail. No, as you can see, Freedom of Russia Legion, Russian Volunteer Corps, and the new Siberian Battalion, they prove otherwise. Everything is possible, you should not be afraid to take action, because they are the opposite side. The Russian authorities are equally as frightened as just the regular Russians. But guess what? The Russian propaganda, they already released a statement that it was not Russian separatists who did it, just to once again show the regular Russian people that these are not Russians doing, these are Ukrainians. Even though, obviously, the Freedom of Russia Legion, Volunteer Corps, Siberian Battalion, they literally recorded videos doing this. The Russian propaganda still said these were Ukrainians who breached our borders. And then they said that all of these attacks by Ukrainians were successfully repelled, and exactly 100 Ukrainian soldiers were eliminated, exactly 6 tanks were destroyed, and exactly 20 armored vehicles, no more, no less, exactly those numbers were destroyed as a result of this failed attempt. But nevertheless, this did happen. Russian separatists were able to cross the border, they were able to destroy several Russian soldiers on the territory of Russia, which is a significant event in its nature, obviously, without a doubt. As you can see right here is the map, where specifically those cities where the representatives of these Russian units were found. And then is yet another video from one of the representatives of the Freedom of Russia Legion, who is saying that it is not over yet. Kursk region should prepare. We are coming. It is only the beginning. Then there is another video also from the Freedom of Russia Legion, when they are saying that they are going to participate in the presidential elections in Russia, but not through the conventional methods, but with the steel and force and repellence and resistance. And a similar video came to one of the representatives of the Siberian Battalion that they're also going to take part in these elections, which by the way are happening in like 2-3 weeks, which basically means that most likely we're gonna continue, hopefully, to see this cross-border action by those Russian military units, hopefully in the near future, hopefully even every single day. Let's see, guys. If there's something gonna happen, I will obviously make sure to report on these events. And by the way, I was able to find a dozen more videos of those anti-Putin Russians in their action on the territory of Russia. I simply could not fit them all in this one small single YouTube video. But if you want to see them all, this is truly impressive and inspiring footage. As always, it is on my Patreon, the link is down below. There is 1 week of free access for every single one of you to check the service to see if you like it or not. And just to sum things up, what is the response by some of Putin's allies, such as for example the president of Belarus Alexander Lukashenko, who, to be honest, in the past already kinda started to show the signs that he's not as close to Putin as he used to be before. But okay, nevertheless, so long story short, whenever he saw this activity by the anti-Putin Russian forces, and also whenever he heard that ATACMS long-range metallic cylinders are approved for Ukraine, he suddenly and out of nowhere announced that all the Belarus military units on the territory of the country will have a sudden, unplanned checkups. So basically that they should kind of prepare for something, they should be on high alert in case something happens, they should be pretty much combat ready. Which makes me think that the timing of this announcement is very suspicious, and the only question here is it a coincidence or not? As always, guys, please let me know down below in the comments what do you personally think. And if you have not seen my previous video when I was talking about the Russian offensive completely dying down, very interesting video, it's gonna appear to my left side, please go ahead and watch it. Please subscribe to my channel, it helps a lot, you have no idea how much it helps with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much Ground News for sponsoring those videos, please go ahead and check official The Russian Dude merch, there are some discounts. Thank you so much Patrons for your support, and see you tomorrow.